about to hear a revolution in talk radio, Liberty Talk Radio, where the critical thinking will defrag your mind of propaganda-ridden viruses induced by mass media news programming. No BS here, just the facts.
And now we present to you America's quintessential iconoclastic anomaly. Wow. In talk radio, your host, Joe Cristiano.
Hello, everyone. This is Joe Cristiano. It's Thursday morning, December 4th, 2014. It's now about 8:02 a.m. Central Time in what used to be called the good old USA. I'm your host, Joe Cristiano, and this is your antidote to popular talk radio. During our live broadcast, we invite you to call 646-652-4620 or toll-free 888-773-4496. We're broadcasting from our studio in Tulsa, Oklahoma, to around the world. Folks, the title of today's program was The Biggest Loser. Now, for those of you who have possibly watched this program on TV, I knew of it. I quite frankly never watched it. I skipped by it a couple of times, had no interest in it. But basically the way the program goes is there's all these people who are grossly overweight, try to lose as much weight as possible, and the person who loses the most wins the game. Well, you know, what's happened in Ferguson, Missouri is the exact opposite. The biggest losers in Ferguson, Missouri are not the winners, not the people who get what they want, but the people who don't get what they want. Those are the true winners. It's the exact opposite of that program. Let me explain it this way. I come from a ghetto. I come from an Italian ghetto. Now, understandably, it is very different than the ghettos that we have today, especially when you're someone of color. There is a very much marked distinction. I do not deny that. But let me tell you something about the ghetto that I lived in. It was mostly Italian. In fact, it was being integrated by other nationalities, Puerto Ricans and whatever, and including blacks, when the mayor decided to knock all the houses down to put in state-subsidized housing projects, destroyed the entire neighborhood, and removed all of the jobs that were available there. Was the worst thing that could ever happen to East Harlem. They destroyed East Harlem and the integration of East Harlem. Another story, but very interesting one. Anyway, I lived on the streets of East Harlem, and quite frankly, it wasn't easy. The gang in the neighborhood on the whole east side were called the Red Wings. Really a big gang, probably the biggest gang in New York. They were so big they had the Red Wing Tots, the Red Wing Red Wings, the Red Wing Tots, and the Red Wingettes, the girls portion, you know. By the way, they left me alone because I went to school with so many of the kids who belonged to the Red Wings. I was friends with them, and they left me alone. In fact, the very head, when I was in grammar school, the head of the Red Wings was George Clemente, and he was in my class. I never forget that. He was sent to jail for killing a Puerto Rican in Hamilton Park because he was sitting in the wrong seat. He was sitting on this imaginary line, and he killed him. I mean, this is how brutal this place was. Now, if you think it was a high-income neighborhood, my father had a factory there and hired 200 people. They used to sew gloves. It's something women don't wear today. And there was a lot of employment. People who lived there actually worked there. Now, my father employed every nationality. It made no difference. I mean, he had the League of Nations, you know, and they did good work. Now, this is back in the old days when women would just sit by the sewing machine and sew, and they would just line to them. And it was an assembly line, and he was a subcontractor for Kaiser Roth Corporation that made, you know, all the garments and stuff like that from overseas. Anyway, and I remember when I used to leave my house, this is how high class we were. I mean, how high income we were, right? When we used to leave the house, I lived at 2407 First Avenue, no longer exists, obviously. And next door was 2409 First Avenue, another tenement. We live on the first floor, we were an apartment, And there was a woman, I think her name was Marie, from what I recall. And she lived on the third floor, and she used to wait for me to come out and go to the candy store or go call on my friends. And she'd call, she'd say, Joey, she says, can you tell me what time it was? Or is. And you think about that. Can you tell me what time it is? I mean, this woman lived in the third story apartment in Harlem and did not own a clock. And every morning I would go into the barber shop or one of the stores there, look at the clock, and then run out and tell her, it's 9:30, and that was it. But it was a real interesting place because it was so well integrated. The gangs didn't leave me alone, but there was a rogue gang called, and they didn't even have a name. There was a rogue gang, and Jimmy was the lead, and he was the meanest SOB on the planet. And every time I went to the park and I was by myself, him and his two warlords would come up to me. Now, we were young kids, and they called them warlords. And he used to come to me, and he used to say these words, what did you say about my mother? Now, that meant, he was going to beat me up. He used to beat me up. I used to wind up, in the sand pit, where kids was playing the sand. They had these sand, like little pools, but with sand in them, And I used to wind up there, come home bloody. Now, my mother, I used to go home, and of course I was all beat up, and my mother used to say, stay away from Jimmy. He's no good. Stay away from Jimmy. When you go to the park, go with your friends. Don't cause trouble. Know where you're going. In other words, we didn't call our attorney. We didn't call the police. We didn't start a gang war. I didn't burn any of the stores down. I didn't do any of that. You know what I did? I avoided Jimmy. Now, I'll tell you a little a sequel to that story. I may have told the story once before, maybe on my commercial program. But I was roller skating, and I made a left turn on 124th Street going west on 124th Street towards 2nd Avenue. And about 1/3 down the block, Jimmy and his two warlord friends were there. And they took me and they whipped me against the pillar of a brownstone. And it chipped this tooth right here. There's still a little chip there. I had it filed down, but there's still a chip there. Never forget. Now, I never swung back at Jimmy because he was always the tough kid and I was kind of a punk. I didn't fight, And for some reason, I lost it. I mean, absolutely lost it. And I took my skates off very, very neatly and the whole bit, just as if nothing was happening, went up to him and beat the heck out of him, knocked him out. I hit him in the face so many times. I can't tell you how many times I hit him in the face. Now, the statute of limitations here was 65 years ago, all right, or 60 years ago, whatever, I hit him. I couldn't stop hitting. I was like crazy. And then his warlords couldn't get me out of there. They would try to push me out of the way. I kept on swinging. And they became afraid of me. But I didn't stop there. What I did is I took Jimmy and I dragged him. Along the street on 124th, waited for a car. Remember, it was a Studebaker, the old Studebakers looked like which way the car was going. I threw his body in front of the car. Car stopped in time, didn't hit him. Went home. Never bothered me again. Now, I'm not advocating violence, don't get me wrong. But I'm just saying people get fed up to a point. But there was a reason for that. You walk down the street and someone's punching you in the face for no reason. But what's more important in this example is that no one called the cops, no one called an attorney, no one burnt down any building, nothing happened. It was between me and Jimmy, or Jimmy and I. And we've resolved that issue. Now, the issue was not resolved properly. It should not have been done by violence, but it was. In that case, it was. And in a sense, you can say maybe justifiably so. What's wrong with Ferguson is that they're trying to right what they perceive to be a wrong. Perceive. They don't know it's a wrong, but they perceive that it's a wrong. Now, when I'm just roller skating down the street, not bothering anyone, not saying anything, a kid comes up and starts punching me in the face, that's wrong. I mean, there's no question about it. You don't need an attorney. You don't need the depositions. You don't need witnesses. You don't need any of that. I was a young kid, and the one kids know one thing, they fight back. Now, we're talking about adults here. You know, and I'm so damn sick and tired of this Ferguson thing. And I blame our government and our news media for perpetuating it. And I wish I could put this damn thing to bed because it's so stupid. Now, my neighborhood was not, I'm telling you the story because my neighborhood was not, it was not Beverly Hills. I was a street kid. These were tenements. I used to sit on the fire escape in my backyard. I could have made a movie. And there were kids of all different, mostly black kids, by the way. I remember they used to be on my left, up about 2 stories, and we used to stare at each other. We used to wave at each other. Our big thing was to sit on the fire escape in the back. That was the big thing. That was taking a risk. I was meeting people. We didn't talk. We didn't do anything. We just looked at each other. Because it was hot out. We had no air conditioning. Again, it's not high-end neighborhood. Now, people who came from that neighborhood, there's a reason for all this garbage, I'm telling you. Yeah? But you see, I got to realize that people didn't think very well of Italians. They didn't, not at all. Italians were sort of like a sub-race, you know. You're human, but you're not really human, you know. And everywhere I went, oh, you're Italian, what are you, part of the mafia? I still get that today. My Uncle Louis, he was in the mafia. Never forget his parting words when he got deported. Never forget. It's still in my heart. He said, are you kidding me? He was dead when I got there. I'm not kidding you. He was part of the mob. Now, the rest of my family, I used to call them, you know, good-hearted slobs. Because they worked day and night. My Uncle Louis was a butcher. My father, he cut gloves. It was his factory, but he worked. I mean, he worked. He laid the material. He was the hardest working person there. Even my grandmother, she had a beading business in the house. No one was rich. Nobody. In fact, if you were middle class, you died and went to heaven. And compared to today, that would be pretty low on the totem pole. But what we did is that we all worked. We worked and we worked and we worked. And we took care of our own. And we took care, when I say our own, I don't mean our own nationality. Our own nationality as well as people that we knew, loved, and respected. And as a result of that, we gained the respect of the community. I never forget my first wife, and this saddens me because I never intended to be divorced. Now, my current wife is an angel, sweetheart, and I wouldn't give her up. I'd give my life up before I give her up. I want to make that very clear. I'm going to be very personal now. My first wife, she was a brilliant girl. She was a she was one of the first female systems engineers for IBM. Unbelievably brilliant, good-looking woman, you know, and the whole bit. But she was German, and I never forget what she told me. And it really broke my heart. She said, you know, ever since I married you, everyone looks at me differently. She said, I no longer have the respect of being a German. She said, now I'm low class, or I'm a lower class. And, you know, she didn't even say apologetically, like she was angry with me. Like we got married and I said, I'm Italian, I forgot to tell you that. You know, she knew that. And she made a point of her feeling less of a person. A lower class person by virtue of the fact that she now carried the Cristiano name. And she always disliked that. And we had 3 children, and then one day she got up and left with her boyfriend at work. And that was the end of that. Was I upset about it? Suicidal. I'm not going to get into that. But my point being is that people do have impressions of nationalities. The Italians were not thought of very well. They were thought of the low-class working, shoveling coal people. But we had to work through that. Now, today, that's not so much that way. If a person's head of a corporation and happens to have an Italian name, people don't think much of it. Maybe still in their minds they go, well, if he had a name like, a German name or an Irish name or an English name, it would give us different flavor. Because we all retain these prejudices, but we don't act on them. We don't say, oh, geez, so-and-so Italian guy's in charge of this company. I'm not doing business with them anymore. Or the product is crappy. We don't do that anymore. Because we did not perpetuate the myth that Italians are really any different than anybody else. Their mannerisms are different. My mannerisms are different than Irish. My wife's family's mannerisms are different than my family mannerisms. Doesn't make one bad and one good. But at a point in time, people accept it. They say, hey, you're not any worse than anyone else. You're a little different. Now, what the black community hasn't done that. They haven't said, well, we have a black community here. Our ancestors, our traditions are different somewhat than many other people, than other nationalities. But we're going to make the best of it, be the best that we can be, so we can be accepted. We're not going to be the same. I'm never going to be the same. I'm never going to be Irish. I'm never going to be German. I'm going to be Italian. But I hopefully will be is accepted as much as anyone else. But the black community, instead of looking into themselves, in what they have, who they are, and making the best that they can do, they abdicate all of that. They give it up. And what they do is they walk away from that, and they look around. Instead of building themselves up, they go around tearing everybody else down. Now, what really annoys me, so the biggest losers, who is the biggest loser? Well, obviously, the person who lost his life, Michael Brown, is a big loser, The officer is a big loser for having to leave his job and having death threats against him for doing something that he thought was correct. And by the way, a council of his peers and even the black peers said, no, he was correct. There's no question about this. So at the end of this, is the black community been elevated or have they been subjugated? There's the question. Have they been elevated or have they subjugated themselves? In other words, do you think more of the black community or do you think less of the black community? Who's the biggest loser here? And what I am suggesting is that the black community, aside from the killing, is the biggest loser. And until they realize that there are more stupid government wasteful programs that make the black elite rich while subjugating the blacks even further so they can gain even more control, they don't realize that. But they ask for more of that. So if you are outside looking in, you're saying, hey, that's too smart. What's wrong with those people? So what is your opinion? Just like my first wife's opinion of me was that I'm not too smart, I'm Italian. By the way, she was right. I wasn't as smart as she was. She was a brilliant woman. And her father and I were best friends. We used to do everything together. Never forget, his name is Chuck. We did everything together. We did ham radio together. We built stuff together. We had a lot of fun. He used to holler at me all the time, but in a fun way. I loved the man. He died many years ago. I just loved him to death. And we had a relationship. He was my best friend. My father-in-law was my best friend. But he never called me stupid. Never. But I learned from him. But he knew who I was. He understood me, appreciated me. He knew I loved his daughter and I was a good person. I didn't want to harm anyone. And that's all he cared about. And that things that he did I was interested in, I wanted to learn. No, I was never as smart as, I never will be as smart as him. I mean, the guy was brilliant. He's a self-made engineer, never went to school. Worked for General Signal as an engineer, never went to school. Brilliant guy. So would I say that, when I see him, I think the Germans are, numbnuts? No, I have tremendous respect. Well, now the black community's got to do the same thing. They have to behave in a way that at the end people go, wow, man, what character. Boy, you got to give them credit. I want you to stay with that thought. We have more coming. We have to stop for station identification.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Express Test is your go-to company for on-site occupational health testing services. That's right, we said on-site. That means we will meet you at your facility for a free health and occupational safety consultation. Express Test specializes in hearing conservation, respiratory protection, and employee safety. We can help you establish viable programs tailored to your business and employee needs. For your free consultation, call 918-743-2929 or visit us at expresstest.com. That's 918-743-2929 or expresstest.com. Do you find yourself asking, what did you say? Aaron Cristiano of Ranch Acres Audiology has over 25 years of experience helping patients just like you.
Hearing requires conservation. We need to be aware and we need to be responsible for our own hearing health.
Understand more with a little help from Ranch Acres Audiology. Call 918-749-7711. That's 918-749-7711 to learn more.
You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio. Political talk derived from a historical perspective. Not always palatable, but good food for thought. Pure libertarian talk with host Joe Cristiano. LibertyTalkRadio.com.
Hi, I'm back. This is Joe Cristiano. You're listening to Liberty Talk Radio, your antidote to popular talk radio. We have one sponsor that we don't have on our board yet. We're going to do it this week, and it's Constance Squires. She's an attorney here in Tulsa. For those people who have ever given thought to having a trust or a will and haven't done it, and it's an ugly thing to do. It's something that you don't get up in the morning and say, man, I can't wait to do a trust, because it's a lot of work, but you need someone to guide yourself through that. And when you do that, bingo. I mean, at least if something should happen, everything is in order. If not, it's really a messy situation for you and your loved ones. Go to her website. It's called Is Thy Will Done? Is Thy Will Done? ISTHYWILDDONE.com. Is Thy Will Done? That's Constance Squires. I call her Connie, and she can help you with that. Please support her or support all of our sponsors, because they're supporting your liberty. Now, let me follow this. We only have about another 10, 15 minutes. We have a president, right? And believe it or not, our president, I know you probably will find this very difficult to believe, but believe it or not, he's a black man. Now, you would think the people rioting in the streets, are in this black ghetto that they can't get out of, sort of like Germany, during at the end of World War II. They can't get out, and no one in office is Jewish or anything like that, and they're all being sent, to Auschwitz and Dachau and places like that, the farms, But no, think about it. I mean, opportunity. We have a black president. No one's ever mentioned that. And you would think that if let's make this Italian. Let's say it's an Italian ghetto, and I was an Italian president. I wouldn't be speaking to the press. I'd be getting my behind over there in Ferguson and say, "You dumb bunnies, you dumb bones. What are you doing? You are a disgrace to the Italian race." Here you are, somebody else got, one of you thugs, got killed. And we're probably better off for it, unfortunately. Why don't you people wake up and smell the roses? Get to work. earn the respect of other people instead of rioting in the streets. But no, our president gets up there, well, we have to really consider the facts and consider programs. There are no programs. You can't have a program to change people's minds and mindsets. They have to do that. Their community has to do that. When I got beat in the park and came home, if my mother said, well, we're going to sue, we're going to find them, we're going to get an attorney, that would have given me a different mindset. But what did my mother say? Stay out of the park. Stay away from Jimmy. He'll beat you up. Be smart. Stay away from Jimmy. Great advice. I avoided him like the plague, except for that once. I almost killed him, other than that. And this is what the president should be saying. We've given you every opportunity. Here in Ferguson, we have trade schools, we have community schools, we have colleges. You're 10 miles from St. Louis, Missouri, where you have all the opportunities of any large city. And what are you doing? Rioting in the streets. Thank you very much. You mean you don't have time to even do work? No, not look for a job. Don't apply for a job. Do work. You mean no one's lawn needs to be mowed. No one's house needs to be painted. No one's pipes need to be welded. I mean, you can't learn a trade. You can't do any. You can't fix someone's car. You can't even do things like become a limousine driver. I mean, a truck driver, get a CDL license, makes $75,000 a year to start. I mean, there are numerous opportunities. But the opportunities take time and effort. They don't want to do that. They'd rather ride in the street and get a paycheck from somebody else. And why isn't the black community talking about all the people that were really harmed in this thing? The business owners, whether it be black, white, green, or orange. They lost their businesses. Businesses were burnt down. For what reason? They served the community. They were part of the community. The community started to implode on itself. Well, because the guy was not a Negro or a black person or a person of African American descent? I mean, is that a reason to burn his place down? And some of these people will be out of business forever? Their dreams and their hopes were destroyed because somebody else? And they're saying, good, it teaches them a lesson, Now they know what it's like? Is that the response? You see, after all this, everything that's said and done, the end result is the mentality of the people. The thought that's in people's minds is what? If you, let's say on a scale of 1 to 100, and I'm going to make this up. This is all made up, folks. Don't look at any book. And let's say I think as far as integrity and stuff like that, that a certain, and it won't, only in my perceived mind, and it's all going to be wrong, that the Italians are here in a scale. They're not 100%, they're maybe 72.4%, whatever. Now, if Italians did all sorts of stupid things, that 74%, 72.4% would go down to 68%. In my own mind. In other words, the impression that I have of Italians would go down. So I encourage everyone, not only Italians, but everyone, to do the best that they can do, be the best that they can be. Help others, be good to society, be good to yourself, be good to your family. And in doing so, you elevate. And the Italians have elevated themselves. Now, I still get joked around saying, oh, yeah, you got an uncle in the mafia. And I play it up when I give speeches. I have a lot of fun doing that. But no one says, oh, man, he's a mafia guy, Italian guy. They just think I'm a little different, and they enjoy listening to me. I have a lot of fun. And I have a lot of friends. And by the way, none of them are Italian. Just happened to be that way. I didn't pick them. I didn't say, well, excuse me, what's your nationality? I'm sorry, you don't qualify. None of them Italian. They're all different of their own nationalities they are. And neither do they care if I'm Italian or Jewish or German or French or Indian or whatever. That makes no difference. But for some reason, the black community now can't recognize that many of the top generals in the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines are black. Many of the mayors in the major cities are black. Many of the police chiefs in major cities are black. Our president is black. Our former attorney general is black. I mean, how much do you need? How many people do you have to have? Like 99.96% of all the people in high office to be black before you say, well, now we're equal? The biggest losers are the people in Ferguson. And the real losers are those people in Ferguson who are doing nothing about it. And they should do something about it. Those people who are not rioting should be on the street talking to these people, saying, get home, do your homework, read a good book, learn a trade, help your neighbor, get off the street, and stop acting like a jerk. But no, they stay home, they're silent. Then when they interview these people, I want to vomit. I get so goddamn mad. Excuse me. I get so mad I can't see straight. Well, looks like we have to do something about this, and we need a program. No, there's no program. There's no program. And what's this we crap? It's you crap. That's what it is. It's you. You've got to do something. Not me. I think I have someone on the line here who wants to say a few words. I think so. I got all these. Hold on a second. Caller, you're on the air. Your first name and where you're calling from, please.
Hello, this is Sarah from Broken Arrow.
Sarah from Broken Arrows. Thank you so much for calling. I hope you're enjoying today's program. What's your question or comment?
Well, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate this call, and thank you for sharing a lot of your personal background. And I see the perspective that you're coming from, and it's so unique, and it's such a great perspective for all of us to hear. And when we were talking about the Ferguson situation, it is sad because, you know, the people in Ferguson were the losers, the biggest losers.
That's right.
But some of the things that I felt so bad about with Ferguson was there was a beautiful black lady who had a bakery, and her bakery was destroyed and burned down. And so donations were coming in to help her. And a lot of the businesses were just mom and pop businesses that were destroyed. And I'm sure a lot of those businesses did belong to the black community and black families. But any family that they had worked hard and sacrificed, you know, for years and years to build up those businesses. It wasn't like the big corporations. And what my question I had from you, coming from your perspective of how you were raised, do you think that there's any hope for Ferguson now to be rebuilt and turned around and get on the right track?
You want to know the raw answer is no, absolutely not. There's not a snowball chance in hell of that ever happening. And the reason why I say that is not so much because of the people, but because of the outside influence that the people are exposed to. When their leaders are telling them, you know, you're right, we have to correct this wrong, what do they correct? They say, wait a minute, well, there's nothing for me to change. I'm doing the right thing. Now, if the leaders were saying, hey, you guys got to rethink this, you know, you just not only put the bakery out of business, and that was run by, let's say, a black lady, you know, and what about the dry cleaners that was owned by a white guy but hired 3 black people? You put that person out of business. Now you have all these people out of a job, no more income coming in, sales tax going down, whatever, you know. You've just ruined your own town. Plus, you put a mark on yourself. No one's going to say, geez, I'm proud that there are black people living in Ferguson. Everyone and their brother-in-law is going to say, not a good place to live. Now, but it's one thing if the government, local, state, as well as the federal government, is saying, this is not right. People in Ferguson need to wake up and correct the situation. I would say, yes, there's plenty of hope. But when the federal government, the state government, local government is saying, we, the term we, meaning you and me, and I have nothing to do with it, we have to do something about it. I say, no, I'm not doing anything about it. What I'm doing about it is I'm talking about it on my radio program. But I'm not going to help them unless they listen to the program and they wake up. And I suspect that day will never happen. So my answer is no, there is no hope. I'm sorry to say that.
Well, I tend to agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like, oh, Joe, you're a negative guy. Come on. Listen, in Harlem, I had the first fully integrated singing group. I sang doo-wop back in the 50s. I can still sing. You're my love, you're my sweet, you're the girl of my dreams. I still sing. Go doo-wop, And I remember my father. Now, my father was from the old country. So, Italians were this, Irish were that. And he had a point score system. Drove me nuts. And I think that's why I'm so sensitive to this, because I was the antithesis of my family. My family was very Italian. Although I knew I was Italian, I thought it was kind of stupid, a lot of things that they did. And they used to get mad. I said, that doesn't make any sense. But to them, it was right because the Italian did it, I remember one time was really funny. I got to tell you this one story. There was a guy running for councilman. He was indicted on 91 counts. 91, indicted on 91 counts. My father campaigned for him. Now, my father was a good man, but he was deeply, deeply religious when it came to being Italian. If you're Italian, you're good. If you're not Italian, you're not so good. Almost the mentality we have today, which is ridiculous. But he was from the old country. He came here with nothing. He groveled. They beat him up because he had a job. He went through a lot of tough times. I don't blame him for that. And we used to make fun of him. And we saw one time in his trunk, he had campaign posters for this bum, this Italian bum. 91 counts he was indicted on. And I said, but how could you do that? I'll never forget this. I said, how could you campaign for this bum? This guy's such a bum. He's going to serve the next 200 years in jail. He says, it was a mistake. Now, that's what his answer was. It was a mistake. They made a mistake, I said, maybe one out of the 91 counts may be a mistake. Not 91 out of 91, But, so, see, I came from a place, a family that was like the people in Ferguson. Only was like pro-Italian, and the Fergusons are pro-black. The black people there are pro-black. But I came from that environment. So I'm coming from, I was always the rebel rouser. My father's birthday, we sang to him on his birthday. I had the group come up and sang to him. He almost died. Do you know why? Because the lead was a black and the second tenor was a Puerto Rican. I swear to God, I almost always thought. I thought he died in a chair. He stood there, didn't breathe. Couldn't believe it. So you see, I have been fighting this myself all my life. All my life I've been fighting this. And even my first wife looked at me like, you're Italian, you're less than me. And she always treated me that way. Brilliant girl. She treated me like I was a less of a human being. Why she married me was beyond me. I hate that, But so I'm sensitive to it. I understand it. I've been there. I've been fighting them since 4 years old. So now when I see this, I say, hey guys, I've been through this. Let me give you some advice. Why don't you work out of it and become the people that you know you can be, instead of digging your hole any deeper. And that's my point. Anyway.
Well, that's a very good point. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah, thank you so much for calling and listening to Liberty Talk Radio. I certainly appreciate it. You take care now. Right, bye-bye now.
Oh, you're welcome. Mm-hmm. Bye.
Well, anyway, so I'm awfully glad someone called and asked that question. What would have happened if the situation was reversed? If the police officer was black, and the perpetrator in this case was white? What would have happened? Now they would have been all confused, saying, "Well, I don't know. A police officer was wrong, but in our minds, but he was black, so he's got to be right." You see how their mind gets goofy? There's no more logic. We develop these prejudices when we're very young. When I was very young, I listened to my family. They drove me nuts. The Irish are this, the Germans are that, the French are this, the Arabians are that. I heard all this stuff. It drove me nuts. How do you know that? I don't know why I thought that way, but it just never made any sense. But eventually, now today, my friends, I have a friend Mohadeen, I had Muhammad, I have a friend George. You name them, you name nationality, I'm the League of Nations of friends. When it comes to friends, I'm the League of Nations. Because I don't pick friends according to nationality. I do it according to character. And what's missing in Ferguson is character. And you cannot correct character. We cannot correct anything. When it comes to character, you have to do that. Have I screwed up in my life? You have no idea how many times. And do I suffer with it? You bet I do. But I keep on fighting back and hopefully make things better. I may leave the studio right now and somebody maybe just next door in the office may say, this guy talks too loud, let's throw the bum out. I gotta be careful, you know? But I mean, you just keep on going. And I get depressed. I get really depressed because the things that I do sometimes are really stupid. But I don't say we have to do something about it. I say I have to do something about it. And every person in Ferguson has to do something about it. The president and the attorney general and the mayors and these activists like Sharpton and all these other clowns, a bunch of clowns, need to keep their mouth shut and tell people to get to work. Put your head down, start studying, start working, and start building a community that you can be proud of instead of destroying everybody else's. You know, we're almost at the witching hour here. I intended to go no more than 45 minutes. It's almost 45 minutes. And we have a new we have a new doohickey here, and I can't figure out where we are time-wise. And I'm going to assume that we have about 2 or 3 minutes left. So with that, I would like to just let me take a look at my notes to see if there is something here. You know, just think of it. Let me leave you with this note. What do you think the status of the black community is now compared to what it was prior to this incident? You think it's better or worse? And if you think it's better, then you have to call the station and tell me how. If it's worse, then they need to do something about it. Okay? All right, folks, let's say this is the end of today's program. We'd like to thank our sponsors for the financial support, and we'd like to thank you for listening in. You can further the cause of liberty by recommending this program to your friends and let us hear from you. Our email address is comments@libertytalkradio.com. Remember, you're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Ferguson, remember that. You're either allowing your liberties to be taken away or you're striving to protect them. Unfortunately, there is no middle ground. Until next time, this is Joe Cristiano. Liberty Talk Radio. Stay well. Stay tuned.